Yeah, 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 yeah.
I found it on Rhema Radio.
You've been listening to B minor Mass by Johann Sebastian Bach, and in commemorating the 500th anniversary of Martin Luther's Reformation in 2017, Malaysian-born and international conductor David Chin will be presenting this exact number, Bach's B minor Mass at the Luther Center in PJ. Held on the 22nd and 23rd of July, the performance will feature music from Malaysia and all around the world. This is Jason.
And this is Adeline.
And you're listening to Rhema Radio, the weekly podcast on faith, culture, music, and more. And we welcome to the studio today the conductor, Mr. David Chin. Welcome.
Hello.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here in the studio.
My pleasure.
Yeah. Tell us, what is this event going to be all about?
Yes, so B minor Mass is considered as one of the best compositions by Johann Sebastian Bach, which is also coined as the father of Western music. And you will be hearing a performance of 16 world-renowned singers and also some of the best orchestra players in Malaysia. So a 2-hour concert, just wonderful, wonderful music.
So that's about 40 people performing this
Yes.
one magnificent masterpiece.
Yes, exactly.
Why is it considered one of the best?
Well, because B minor Mass encompasses, I think, the writing style of the entire life of J.S. Bach. And you will hear some older style of his time and also some of the most trendy things that was going on musically during Bach's lifetime. So he collected all this different style of music and put it into this composition. And so it has been very famous ever since it has been performed by his son, C.P.E. Bach.
My other question is that since there are so many classical musicians who have been really popular, why have you chosen Bach out of all of them?
Well, first of all, Bach was actually not famous or popular during his lifetime.
Oh, he's not.
He was only known as this, organist from this little city that worked in the church. But his music became really famous long after he died, and thanks to Mendelssohn, who revived his St. Matthew Passion, and ever since then, in Berlin, the Sing Academy, where in the 19th century, when all this community choir, when it was most prominent, Bach music was revived, and people suddenly discovered this genius, and then ever since then, people have been singing music of Bach. And I don't think any composers will say that they could surpass what Bach have done, because it's just a genius.
And how many years after he died that he was found out that his composition was so amazing?
It's about 100 years later.
100 years?
Yeah, I think. Yeah, early 1800s. So.
Well, that's what happened to a lot of musicians and artists that you know.
True. Well, we do have some composers and musicians who were very famous during their lifetime, like Liszt, he was like a pop star, He would purposely leave handkerchief beside the piano after his recital and walk off, and all the women will run on stage, and that's Franz Liszt, but that's not the case for J.S. Bach.
That was how being a diva was in those times.
Yes, sure.
It's like throwing a shirt in a concert.
Yes.
So tell me about Bach's routine. Like, he wrote at least 1,000 pieces in his lifetime. 2/3 of them were for the Lutheran Church. So he must have been really, very inspired, or he felt a sense of needing to do that?
Yes, I mean, it's very interesting because if you think about the activity space of Bach of his entire lifetime is within 500 kilometers. He never left Germany. Composers who are very famous at the same time, like Telemann, like Handel, they travel to different countries and all that. And Bach was just in Germany. And he was born in Eisenach. And after going to different cities in Germany, he ended up in Leipzig, a quite small city. It's much, much smaller than Kuala Lumpur. I was just there about 3 weeks ago. If you walk from one end of the city to another end, it probably take you 15 to 20 minutes.
Wow.
Oh.
Yes, very small city. So in 1723, if my memory is serving me correctly, this city of Leipzig hired Bach to be the music director of the city. So his responsibilities include teaching the boys in the St. Thomas School, teaching them Latin, which Bach hated, and teaching them music, so instruments and singing. And then he was also responsible for the music for 4 different churches in Leipzig. So you have the St. Thomas Church, the St. Nicholas Church, and 2 other churches that do not exist anymore today. And so then these boys that he teach on a daily basis, they would be the musician in the churches on Sunday, And so in order for them to have music, he was responsible to compose a new cantata each Sunday for, I think, for at least 5 consecutive years. But only 200 of these cantatas came down to us. So in addition to teaching and to provide music in the church, he was also the nanny for these boys. He had to put them to bed and make sure they were disciplined and make sure they eat their vegetables, I think.
That's quite the
Sounds
job description.
Yes. And we also know that Bach is a brilliant theologian, because we found his Bible in his library is full of marking. And, I have conducted, out of 200, I've only conducted about 25 of his cantatas. But I can tell you, each cantata is a sermon. And each cantata is so rich theologically. If you analyze it from a musical perspective, it's just so rich. And we know that this cantatas was written according to the lectionary of each Sunday. So I don't know how he does it. But he had about 20 something kids, and I think they helped him to copy his manuscript, or his wife maybe. And we heard from historical account that sometime this ink probably were still like wet, when they rehearse. I mean, think about this. You have Sunday, you just perform a new cantata, and then you go into Monday, you have to start writing a new one. And then maybe by Wednesday or Thursday, you're finished, but then you have to copy the parts for each instrument. And then there's rehearsal, And then Sunday comes again. So very, very busy.
And that was the routine for at least 5 years, you said.
Yeah.
Out of curiosity, weren't there other songs that you perform on Sundays at that time?
Other songs?
What were they singing if, say, it wasn't Bach's
Oh, I see. Okay. Well, I think they would still sing some pieces by composers that came before Bach, probably some motet from the Renaissance era, or even maybe some instrumental works by other composers. But cantatas were definitely the highlight of the service. And of course, we know, the strong Lutheran tradition, chorale, which what we call hymns today, that is the most important portion, not just of the church life at the time, but also the life of the community. People come together, they just sing chorale. And that will bring us to Martin Luther, because we know that church up to 1517, prior to the Reformation, congregation, they don't really sing in church because all the pieces were very difficultly written, were only written for the trained choir, and they were written in Latin. And we know that in Martin Luther's time, you will only learn Latin if you go to a very good school, and then you have to be rich, which means the majority of the people going to church from Sundays to Sundays, not understanding what was going on in the church.
It wasn't accessible.
It wasn't accessible at all, but then you have to go to church because that was part of the law, at the time. So, and, obviously Martin Luther came along and saw a lot of corruption in church. And so that's why we had this Reformation, and part of the Reformation and part of the change in the music of the worship services is that it has to be vernacular. So, Martin Luther then had written many different hymns at the time, and also maybe borrow some folk tune because he wasn't able to compose like maybe 500 hymns in over the course of 2 weeks. So, but thanks to Martin Luther, we are able to sing in church today.
You've been listening to international conductor David Chin talk about Bach and his music. Stay tuned.
Rhema Radio.
Hello, my name is David Chin, and I'm the Artistic Director of the Malaysia Bach Festival. Join us as we commemorate the 500th anniversary of Luther's Reformation in a concert of Johann Sebastian Bach's Mass in B minor, organized by the Lutheran Church in Malaysia, featuring the Malaysia Bach Festival Singers and Orchestra. Saturday, July 22nd and Sunday, 23rd, 7:30 p.m. at Luther Center in Petaling Jaya. For more information, please log on to www.lcm.org.my or call 03-7956-5992.
Rhema Radio.
Hi, you've been listening to Rhema Radio, and this is Adeline.
And this is Jason.
And we have with us today music conductor David Chin. So I'm going to be an amateur here, and I'm just going to ask the question. What is a cantata? Because just now you were mentioning many times.
Is it a dessert? Is it a kind of...
It sounds like a dance, Has some
dance
cantata.
move, or what's that?
Well, so I think many people, if you have some sort of piano lesson experience, you know what sonata is. Like Beethoven's sonata.
Adeline, do you know what a sonata is?
Sonata. It sounds like a Korean word.
Because the
Winter sonata. No. Well, that's the same. Well, that's actually the same sonata. Well, sonata simply means, in Italian, means work to play. So instrumental work. So cantate means to sing. Yep. So, but this term cantata didn't really come along until much later. I think it was in the 19th century a musicologist decided to call all Bach church work cantata. During Bach's time, he would call his music that was performed in church simply Kirchenstücke, means church works.
Cantata sounds easier to pronounce.
Yes, cantata. So what are cantatas? Basically, cantatas were written for churches each week, and Bach would write a new one each week. We have mentioned that already. And in this cantata, we will have usually an opening chorus, so very elaborated orchestra and choral movement, that lasts about a few minutes, and then followed by some solo. And then it would always end with a congregation chorale. And sometimes, the entire cantata is based on one particular chorale tune. And at this concert that we'll perform on July 22nd and 23rd, we will actually start the concert with one movement from cantata number 80, which is A Mighty Fortress is Our God, a tune composed by Martin Luther and arranged by Bach. So, what does that have to do with B minor Mass? The music of B minor Mass, many of them were music that was reused from previous cantatas. So Bach would go back to his composition, maybe from an earlier cantata, and take the music and change the word and put in new words for the Mass. So then that's why you get different styles in one particular work, because he went back to different time period to borrow his own composition.
Kind of like a medley of his styles.
Yeah.
Okay. You mentioned A Mighty Fortress, and that's a composition by Martin Luther, right? And this was a man very inspirational for, very important in the Reformation movement.
Yes.
150 years before Bach's birth, right? So could you talk to us about the significance of Martin Luther and that song?
Okay, so, if you are familiar with the hymn tune, A Mighty Fortress is Our God, and then it talks about evil, Satan, and all that. Basically, all this allegory was pointing towards the corruption in the church, So, he was very furious, and I can imagine Martin Luther is definitely not a soft-spoken man.
So it was really kind of like inspired, and also you say it was an allegory of
Yes.
a response to how he felt at the time.
He was saying that, all this devil was like hurting the church and trying to, destroy the church and all that. And those were the corruption, of false teaching, so to speak. So he saw all this thing. And so many people thought, when we think about Martin Luther, we think that he was trying to form a new church, and that was not true at all. Because we know even after the Reformation, the very first time when he was distributing Holy Communion, it was actually in a church called St. Mary, which is a Catholic church. So I don't think he was trying to form a new church, but rather he was trying to just purge and trying to reform and trying to get rid of the corruption in the church at the time.
So Martin Luther grew up a Catholic. He was in Catholic
But
background.
he was a monk.
Yeah.
So, a monk was not allowed to marry. So right after the Reformation, he married a nun.
Oh,
Yes. And they live happily, and they actually, in the monastery, they have a school. They would have kids. They would feed them and teach them music and teach them knowledge. And, part of the thing, why Reformation happened is also because, printing was just started, I think, at the end of 1400, and the Bible was printed, and then knowledge becoming more accessible. So, the authority cannot really dominate the knowledge or trying to control people's mind, like they used to. So, and we also know that, part of the Renaissance is humanism, people starting to think that we can think for ourselves, you don't have to tell me how to think, I can think for myself. And so all this accessible knowledge and all that kind of is expected that the Reformation was going to come.
What I understood was that because of the indulgence that was happening,
Yes.
and the injustice that he saw in the churches,
Yes.
and he needed to, he was quite, he is quite compliant. I understand growing up, but it's more like when after he saw more and more of this, he needed to do something, and he did it with his music.
Definitely. Well, music is part of it, and I think the biggest thing about Reformation that started the Reformation was the 95 Thesis that he nailed at the gate of the Wittenberg church.
Yeah, and in the context of music, at that time, the congregation was not allowed to sing. Is that the fact? Yeah.
Right. Because the music was difficult and the music were in Latin. So Martin Luther came along and said, well, has to be in German, and we're not going to get rid of all the Latin in the church. There are some elements in the worship services, like, the Kyrie, the Gloria, the Credo, Sanctus Agnus Dei. By the way, all these are from the B minor Mass. So that's the Mass. That Mass ordinary that is being repeated every week. People understand.
Okay.
Hallelujah. We don't have to translate to English. We know it's praise ye the Lord. But things like that were still kept in the Lutheran Church even after Reformation. So they were still Latin being sung in the church. So that tradition went all the way to Bach. So we know that Bach's choir still sings some sort of Latin. So, but the preaching, the Bible reading, majority of the content of the service were in vernacular, which is German.
You've been listening to conductor David Chin talk about Bach and Martin Luther, and when we come back, we talk more about what you can expect on this 22nd and 23rd performance. Stay tuned.
Rhema Radio.
Next Saturday, on the 15th of July, Living Hope will be having a 10th anniversary charity carnival at the school in Jaya 1. Come and join in the fun from 11 a.m. till 5 p.m. There'll be food, games, musical performance, and products for sales in 70 stores. Living Hope, helping thousands of poor children in Malaysia since 2007. For more information, call Susan at 03-7727 5887 and visit livinghopeglobal.org.
Radio.
Hi everyone, this is Adeline.
It's Jason.
And today we are with music conductor David Chin. So just want to know about the B minor Mass. From what I heard, it's actually a Latin composition, but it is played in the 500th anniversary of Luther. And we know that Luther is the leader of Reformation, and Latin is actually related to Catholic Church.
Yeah.
So what is the relationship, significance of that?
Yes. Well, we know that, yes, this is true that Martin Luther was encouraging the vernacular in the churches after the Reformation. But we do know that Latin was still being used in churches, especially, the Mass Ordinary, like the Kyrie, the Gloria, the Credo, the Sanctus, the Agnus Dei, things that is being repeated every Sunday, that people understand. Those were preserved in the services. Actually, if you go to some Lutheran church today, it's still being sung in Latin, but the other portion like preaching or Bible reading and all that, those have been changed to German, I believe. And so why B minor Mass? I think the reason is because this is a common thing that the Protestant church and the Catholic church share.
Right.
And even after the Reformation. So I think there are more similarities than differences that we know between the Protestant and the Catholic churches.
Could you talk to us a bit about the preparation for this coming show? Like, how did this group of people come together, and how do you end up conducting it?
So about, I think, 2 years ago, it was Bach's 330th birthday in 2015. So I started the Malaysia Bach Festival, and we have a choir and an orchestra that consists of mainly singers and some of the best instrumentalists from Malaysia. And for this upcoming concert, actually, the average age of our performers, I think, is around 30. Many of them are still pursuing music degrees in colleges, both local and overseas. And they are back here for the summer vacation. And our instrumentalists are some of the, really some of the best in the nation. And some of them plays in the National Symphony Orchestra. And so we are very excited to bring all these people together. And we only have a week of rehearsal. We will meet this coming Saturday, and then we will perform the next Saturday. And this is, I guess this is how professional works. And I will be playing some of the numbers. I'll be conducting from the harpsichord, although we don't have a real harpsichord here in Malaysia, so a digital harpsichord. And it's going to be fun.
And you yourself have been on kind of a tour the past few weeks, isn't it? I mean, just doing different shows.
That's right. I just came back from the East Malaysia Bach Cantata tour. This is the third time. And we actually, each year, we will pick like 2 Bach cantatas, and then we will have a lecture that goes with it, and we'll bring them to different cities in East Malaysia. We have been to, Bintulu, Cebu, Miri, Kota Kinabalu, and also Kuching, and share with the people there. And the audience there are very enthusiastic. And so they are actually also performing B minor Mass at the end of the year. Yes, in East Malaysia.
So perhaps you could end with this. Why is this piece and this this whole thing about Bach's performance and his composition, why is it meaningful to you personally? Why do you do this? Yeah.
I think the central of the Mass is the creed, which is the Apostle Creed that we recite every Sunday when we go to church. And the center of the Apostle Creed is actually the birth of Christ and the crucifixion of Christ. I think that is the central message for Christianity and for the world. Christ came to earth and Christ died for us. And that is the central message of the Mass.
I'm sure a lot of people are interested to really, sever the music and scripture together.
Especially after hearing what it's all about and how it came to be.
Yeah, in one
It's
scene.
very exciting music. There are some very festive and celebrative moment, and then there are some very solemn and expressive moment. And and Bach would just take us through the entire journey through his music.
That is something that I want to buy a ticket and just, get right there.
Please do.
How do we actually get tickets?
You could log on to www.lcm.org.my or call 03-7956-5992.
Great. We hope to all the best for you and your entire choir and orchestra, and I'm sure it will be a great success.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
As the sun begins to shine, awake this slumbering heart of mine, as it marks a brand new day, standing strong along the way. As the sunrise comes to play, awakes my world like once again, as it marks a brand new day. I love to sunshine all the way. Today I want to live a life that's all for you. My declaration that my heart intends to do. Today I wanna live a life that's all for you. Let the music play as I live my life today. Play my songs on the radio. Let the music take control. A grateful heart with bended knees. A simple prayer to God I'll see. Today I wanna live a life that's all for you. My declaration that my heart intends to do. Today I wanna live a life that's all for you. Let the music play as I live my life today. Today I wanna live for you. 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 Today I want to live a life that's all for you. My declaration that my heart intends to do. Today I want to live a life that's all for you. Let the music play as I live my life today. Today I wanna live a life that's all for you. My declaration that my heart intends to do. Today I wanna live a life that's all for you. Let the music play as I live my life today.
This segment's episode features music by Tim Lim. Today's episode is recorded, edited and mixed by Moses Chan at Proto Studio. We would love to hear from you, especially if you have a testimony to share. Write to us at hello@rhema.rad.io. Stream or download new episodes weekly on Friday evening. Don't miss out on the sermon Don't Bojo from Every Nation Church on 8th of April 2017 in the next segment. God bless!
I found it on Rhema Radio.